Good morning, everybody. Yeah, off to a good start. Everybody going well. It's late today. We'll sort the volumes out on some things. Alrighty. Live on the YouTube, which today has the terrible virtual background. Absolutely awful. But we're live on Instagram as well. Yeah, still haven't got Facebook working again, so we'll work on that. Bluetooth turned off. Yeah, cool. All right. So who have we got already today? We've got Non-Fungible Toy, Liam Crane, Organic Escate, Ethan Kelly, DB1 Husker, little bits of Join Us from Thailand, over in Thailand at the moment, apparently. Dustin Green Genius, how you going? You're a weapon. Kabuzi, the Surf Bud, and Tarek. How's everybody doing today? Yeah, Sunday. I've got an Earl Grey tea. So, being that someone was asking me a bunch of questions about it this morning, and we just got a reprint of them, which we're going to be sending out to shops, and it's kind of somewhat of something that comes up regularly. I figured I'd go over the guides. I've got some guides over here. I've got the Island Blend ones. Hang on, let me stop sharing the asset. There we go. No, there you go. Now I'm all filtered out. All right, Island Blend. It's upside down, Miss Pat, but there's the light soil, and then there's a full spec one in there somewhere. I promise. There it is. There, that one there. So I figured we could go over a little bit of how to read it. We've added a back page to it now, and the back page does explain somewhat of how to read our funky, weird, super cool guide. But we can go over it here and maybe demystify it a little bit easier for you. Peeves and Aussie Autos and Coco Garden. Oh, we've got some Inner Sanctum ones today. It's going to be an exciting one. Yeah. So, I mean, the guide was something that we tried to set up in such a way that was creative. But because it's a bit of a different layout to what people are used to, that's obviously going to cause some confusion. Let's see if I can move this more so it's over here a little bit. And then I can get Rick down just a little bit because we love you, Rick, but we love you, Rick. Yeah. Mitch and Minnie and the Joker of Oz. How y'all doing today? Right. So it's set out in a wheel. So if that's confusing to you, you can just imagine that it's laid out end to end, right? So really, it's just a straight line that's been warped into a circle. So it's not that different to what you used to. It's just more a case of different layout. And why is it laid out that way? It's because soil's never really done. You don't throw this stuff away. You keep reusing it. So you get to the end, and it's set out in the wheel in such a way so you can just keep going and going and going. Okay, that was the idea of setting it out in such a way. So there's different segments in that wheel. You've got your water ring because you use that when you're watering, and you've got your top dress power band there, and then you've got your power boost power band, obviously, which takes up most because there's most different options that you can do, and then you've got a rim end part at the end there. Rich, no worries, man. Have fun. Go and hire a scoot or something like that, and get out and cause some mischief. Yeah. So, all right. What an effect one. There we go. That's better. There's a reverb. So in the water ring, there's different segments, and so that's roughly, um, when people are watering. So you might need to water a little bit more, you might need to water less, which would be unusual. For instance, in the full spec guide, it's really only recommended a couple of days a week, giving it a deep soak. So, um, what I would say is if you need to water more, you don't need to feed more. So just use just some plain water, or you can add a little bit of Rhizo Mojo to that if you want, or water with a bit of extra mojo. But really, that amount of feeds per week is all you need. It's really only if you need additional moisture. You sort of go in between the days. And so, yeah, it'll recommend based on the pot size what percentage you would use for that watering. And then you just follow that segment up, and it recommends the dosage per litre of that feed water. Does that make sense? You with me, or have I lost yous? Again, I promise it makes sense. So if we look at what I did there, right? So that's your day. Moonshot, yeah, it doesn't it needs a very professional whiteboard. We've got 2 people on the YouTube, so greetings and hello to you, and sorry my background sucks today. I don't know why it's decided to wig out like this, but, yeah, it's less 4K today than I would like. Um, yeah, so basically it recommends roughly the amount that you would use for your watering, and then it recommends roughly how much you would add to that dose of watering if you are using that part of the power band. Um, so yeah, based on that day, that segment of the wheel will have your doses of additional products should you want to use those. Um, and then you've got your top dress um, power band, which I mean, again, it just recommends, say, in that. G'day, Tank 10, how you going, mate? It recommends, say, in week 3. So that Herb Superb and Stone Age top dress dose lies in week 3. So that's when we recommend you would time that dose. So you can do it any time throughout that week, is recommended as the optimal time to do it. And it's separate from your water feeds because it's a separate thing, and you don't have to go to those levels in every instance. Like if you're using larger pots, you might use a minimal level of supplementation. So, yeah, all laid out in such a way that it's all segmented. You just kind of got to follow the wheel to to be able to sort of understand what you're doing. So we've added a back page now, super awesome back page, which is coming up backwards on the camera because that's the way this stuff works. But that it gives you sort of some details on how to read the guide. It's a guide to the guide, and there's some humor in there too, because we've got Groku on there. He's our little figure there. Um, a superhuman planetoid character from the planet Canaron, somewhere out near the Crab Nebula. The Crab Nebula formed around 1054, I think it was BC. Sorry, AD. Yeah, AD. Um, yeah, and so he's from there, and so he appears throughout the guide, and it has a bit of his um, background history. But more importantly, it explains the water ring, it explains the top dress section, and it explains the power boost section. Broke a hinge. How you going, dude? Right. Sangha. Yeah. So, some more detail there about sort of what to use and when, including thoughts on levels of supplementation when using certain sizes of pots. So, obviously, a 20-litre pot can stand and utilize a lot more supplementation than what a 40-litre or larger pot would need in that. type of cycle. And yeah, the most of the reamendment info we kind of put up in that video, so that would apply in sort of the rejuvenation section of it. Yeah, you've got some fire going on there, man. Warriganja's channel for all the yeah, Mad grows. Was Mad Auto stuff there for a while and now moved back into photo period plants and killing it with those as well. Um, so yeah, there's information on pot sizing. There's information on the environmental parameters that we would hope to see if you were following that guide. So obviously, if your temperatures and your humidity and all your other environment stuff is completely different to what we used when formulating the guide, then you're going to need to um, modify to suit your environment. You know, it can't be all encompassing, and no guide is ever going to be a formula for growing a perfect plant. It is a guide, and you know, with the intention that your skills as a gardener over time will, you know, they could already be at a really proficient level, but at the very least, it gives you a good starting place to then improve on things over time. So I hesitate to sort of say, you know, like follow this to an exact T and you will get X. But if you do follow that guide roughly within those parameters and you have those environmental conditions and good genetics, it's hard to go wrong. Stern. And yeah, agreed. Thank Dan. Oregon has always got some mad stuff going on. Triple X OG cross banana Z cake. What? Sweet baby May. Always nice to see some people from WA on. In fact, actually, that's one of the advantages of coming on a little bit later. I think it makes it easier for the people on the western side of the country to get on here and hear me ramble. So what's up? Hitting it, yeah. I actually thought the filter on Instagram looks more like the dimensional rift that antimatter came out of. So I sort of picked that one. It's very Tron-like. 61 Falcon. Um, so yeah, I think yeah. So those environmental parameters, which you know, if you're following those, then roughly your dryback will be similar to what we experienced when putting the guide together. So the watering should match. Um, and then yeah, it explains kind of a bit of what I said about the top dress section and the power boost section, all extremely hypey names. But you know, it's I mean, you're either allergic to it or you're not. It's one of those things. We're trying to be fun, you know. If you're allergic to fun, maybe it's not for you. Um, I kind of like it, so you know. I think you can be professional and also have fun. Some other people may disagree. Zoe, hello there. And then like a perfectly timed, um, like silence. Yeah. Yeah, you know, I've had a few people suggest that LinkedIn because of the triangle, and the Mojo graphics. Sort of been a few people saying that that's some Illuminati sort of looking stuff. I'll leave that up to you to decide. Just put that out there, you know, and there'll be a conspiracy theory about it on Reddit somewhere. Yeah, so there's guides for the full spec, there's guides for the light soil, there's guides for the island blend currently. Um, we will be sending them out to stores as they order our stuff hopefully, and be sending them out with direct orders as well. So if you order a plant pack or something like that, we will send you a guide so you can sort of more explain that. We have had them on the website, but you know, it's not always the most convenient for people. And having something that you can just pop in your tent pocket um, and then cross off on your way through, that's more ideal. So it's more cost effective for us to get these guys, especially the size we have them done, in larger batches. So, yeah, we just sort of had to wait until we could kind of afford to get a large batch done. But we've got several boxes of them now, so shouldn't run out for a little while. And I'm doing some other ones too. So there will be a island blend with teas, um, and other adjuncts guide, and a grow dirt light winter feeding with teas and other stuff guide. I'm just sort of putting the finishing touches on that. Rose Clover, nice to see you. And Outdoor Cannon Ninja. Um, yeah, I mean, we're tight. Thank you. You know, we talk. Nah, tinfoil hats. No, I only take the tinfoil hat off to be on here because it reflects the studio lights wrong and people say it's weird. The rest of the time it stays firmly on my head so they can't get up my brain. And yeah, agreed, Aussie Autos. I think I shouted you out at the Canon Ninja, but hello again. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, so the one that I suppose we don't have a guide for as yet is the Gorilla Soil, and the other one would be the Super Starter. Um, is that something you would like to see? Would you like to see a Super Starter guide, and say a like 4 month outdoor one and like a 9 month outdoor one? Because those would obviously have to be a bit different. Um, Thinking, yeah, which is from the Aussie Autos official church, yeah, on a Sunday. G'day, Luke. Yeah. So yeah, if that's something that you would like, I mean, the Gorilla one would probably be very useful. But the Super Starter, I don't know whether you really need a guide for the amount of time that things are in there, but it could be helpful. There's not really a lot of supplementation used um, in that sort of in that mix. It would just kind of be like, maybe including details about the seed soak thing that we sometimes do, and maybe some dosages of the microbes. But yeah, I think it's more the full term cycles, which are the ones that seem to be more needed. I gotta skip this one because for some reason it really didn't like me playing this one last time. I love this album too, by the way, but it wouldn't let me do it. It was really mean to me about it. Super mean, super unkind. Ozio. Different people. But for some reason, it doesn't care when I play Sly or Funkadelic. Yeah, so when people are outdoors, typically they're, either going a shorter cycle, so sort of planting around December, or they're starting earlier if they've got things that are more adapted. So obviously they'd be two. We'd recommend different pot sizing and we'd recommend different supplementation. Um, but yeah, if that's of use, I think I'll put one of those together. Holds in. There's some new people watching today, which is cool. It's always nice to see old faces and new. Yeah, man, do that. Do that. Homemade lactobacillus is always the best lactobacillus. G'day, crusty crops. Locally adapted to your environment, of course. We brew up our own out here as well, um, and it's pretty banger stuff. But yeah, that KNF stuff typically tends to work best um, done as close to where it's going to be used as possible. So your IMO collections and your lactobacillus, so the yeasts from the air, for instance, would be more adapted to your environment, which would technically make them longer lived when used. Um, that's what they found with like effective microorganisms is they work, but they're much more short-lived in the environment than what locally brewed cultures are. Anyway, I digress. David, How you going? How's everybody going? Hey, we got a comment over there. Stone Man 420 on the YouTube getting the best results he's ever had with the HPO lineup, and he loves it. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. We're really stoked for everyone that's using our stuff and supporting what we're trying to do. We think we make some pretty cool gear. Certainly not the only gear, but make some pretty cool stuff with a pretty cool take some of the time. And at the very least, but I mean that full spec dirt's a bad mofo, dude. I mean, anyone that cracks open a bag of that stuff is normally pretty impressed. And we work super hard at that, so it's something that we cultivate, just like you cultivate. That's right. So Dankden is a dairy farmer, or works in dairy farming. So you would have access to the stuff that's been unpasteurized. That's amazing, dude. Yeah, I might have to get you to how I've sent you some. I think I've sent it to you before, but the stuff with where I do with the brown sugar. Might have to get you to preserve some of yours and send it over to me. I'd love to try it out. 'Cause, yeah, that'd go off. I mean, go off like in a good way, not like milk kind of way. Have you eaten the cheese that comes out of making the lacto yet? 'Cause that's pretty nice. Doesn't store for a real long time though. Does anyone know the time? You probably would have watched Jay and Silent Bob. It's their favorite band. I don't know, man. I mean, WA is a tricky one, right? So they got the whole quarantine thing, and that involves pasteurizing the soil. It's a living soil. Pasteurizing it's a difficult kind of thing. Arguably, a lot of that stuff would bounce back, but it's kind of like not going to be what I would be sending out to people over here. So I don't know, man. I would have to check it out. I know you've got a big shortage of potting mixes over there at the moment. I know we get asked for our soil over there all the time. People would certainly like to see it there. I just kind of don't want to cop fines and stuff for sending it there, if you know what I'm saying. So it's more just trying to work out a way to make that um, a sustainable thing. Ideally, I would like to have it through the people that retail our stuff over there. Um, but that involves sending pallets and pallets of the stuff over there. Flying kites and Geordie. But as always, David, it's something that I'm checking into and trying to sort out. Yeah. At the moment, that's kind of how it seems to roll, Aussie autos. Yeah, people kind of doing doing the dirty to get the dirt. But yeah. Oh yeah, and Tough Love Gardening. I know I mentioned them last week as well, but they've got their stock and they're sort of rolling all that stuff out now. So they're down in South Australia. So if you're looking at picking our stuff up down there, they're holding stock and have, yeah, I think they got the whole range. So yeah, stock in there. They've got 40 liters, 20 liters, all that stuff, the tins, everything that you would need to go from seed to green. As in growing things under LEDs in soil. Yeah, I mean, it works. Yeah. Yeah, well, we're trying to figure that out, thank them. But, it's one of those things, we sort of, yeah, things go in and out. But soil under HPS used to work sick too, and soil under, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, technically ours already is that, dude. Like, it works perfectly well under LED lights or HPS or whatever. So, it's a nice angle. But really a high output soil, in a good environment will output. So, where all of the tests recently in the last year have been converted over to high output LEDs, and they're working better than ever. Um, it certainly is as good or better than the CMH ones, and as good or better than the HPS or MH combinations, 10 years ago. So yeah, we've been on that. We've optimized the feeding program now so that if people are pushing really, really high PPFD levels, that they can kind of supplement to get there, or, obviously we recommend pot sizes and all that sort of stuff to suit those environments. But yeah, I mean, if it's got the juice, it will run the marathon. G'day, Cooper. And yeah, certainly Warwick Gange is living proof that it works. And he's using the light soil the majority of the time, not even using the full spec. The full spec has even more legs. Yeah, I'd agree with that, Warwick Gange, actually. I'm a fan of them. They seem to really output a lot. We tried some of the Spider Farmer ones, and I think one of the guys has got the other brand of it. Don't think it's the AC Infinity. Some people are running those too. It was some other brand, but it wasn't Mars Hydro. Anyway, that that particular one there works really, really well. In fact, it's really super high output. I don't think it gets run over 75% the majority of the time. And I've got to skip Curtis too because it doesn't like Curtis. Sorry, Curtis. Yeah, but I mean, it works under whatever lamp. Like, so, I mean, it's yeah, as I say, I more push that one towards auto people. But whatever your lamp of choice is, it'll work. It's about environments, and, LEDs are obviously a great type of light, but, it bears mentioning that, what got us to LEDs was globes, and there's a lot of people out there still using those because they don't have a couple of K sometimes to go and drop on the new LEDs. So, I mean, I really was slow to change from CMHs. I think they're actually still a really good solution because, particularly in wintertime, for a lot of people, that saves them having to run a heater as well as the LED light. So you would argue that sometimes that's more efficient, and CMHs produce a fair bit of light for the like for the wattage. Um, so yeah, I was pretty slow to change from them, but I mean, most people are using it. Most people are converting to or are beginning to use LEDs. Um, and so yeah, that's where I've kind of been more trying to focus on optimizing that. Yeah, I didn't really have to worry about changing anything with the blurples because the output on them was so kind of pathetic that, I mean, you can use them and they work. Jimbo Jones does great stuff under them. Um, but yeah, they just didn't have the output of these new sort of white ones that are a lot more high output. Um, so yeah, bit of augmentation. That's the aquamarine and ocean potion. Seems to really affect the calcium and magnesium uptake mainly. But again, soil testing and all that sort of stuff, we were able to optimize that a little bit further. But even then, the reserves of calcium and magnesium in that soil are balanced well and in good supply, particularly the full spec and gorilla. So yeah, it should be all there to meet the needs. It's about having the environment, um, and the other stuff, the supplementation. It's just sort of adding to that if you need it. I think it's Lush 79. How you going? Brick. House. Mhm. Yeah, so that's the thing about, for yeah, there's one guy, for instance, is running, I think it's a 400 and something watt, Spider Farmer Lite, but the temperatures have been so cold that they're also having to run an additional heater to keep the room warm. So they've got a lighting bill and a heating bill. Um, Previous to that, they were running a CMH, and that kept the temperatures mostly, especially during the on period, warm enough to where they didn't have to run a heater. So that's one of those scenarios where the output is a little bit nicer quality-wise, not massively, massively drastically different, but it is a bit better, and growth is a little bit faster, but that also comes at the expense of having to add something else to kind of keep the environment in check. So it's all of that. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, tank dens sort of using some different stuff. But yeah, it seems to hit them harder, and that's not surprising because you're, driving more light into them. More light means that they're gonna need more uptake, prevailing that everything else is there to meet that. Um, so really it's about trying to make sure that it has everything it needs there in the first place, or that you're providing more of what it's demonstrating it needs along the way. Got a couple of people over on the YouTube, if you're going well. Tone Loc sampled this. It's a good song. And I have no doubt too that just when, LEDs get to their most proficient, that there'll be something else that'll come along and be the new thing. It tends to be the way this stuff kind of works. It's a bit like, mobile phones or anything else technology-wise. Unhazed Autos and A, how you going? Oh, we went over a bit of, how to read our funky, weird guides, the grow guides, Unhazed Autos. Um, and then, I guess stream of consciousness after that. Just, shooting the shiz with your talking and answering questions. Drinking water because I've finished my tea. Wish I had another one. I'm going to make another one after this. It's so cold here today too. I'll get some firewood. Yeah, not too bad. Hey, 420 Galaxy, it's been a minute since I've seen you. Super nice to see you. Hope you're going well. We've built a few different airlifts too. So we're experimenting with different kinds, like obviously the traditional type. But yeah, it's some other different sorts of ones. Just grab a whole bunch of different plumbing fittings. kind of what happens if you make it this shape. One thing I would say is exact same size brew, same size air brewer and everything like that. One of them done airlift, and the other one done just with putting stuff in a bag and aerating it with air stones. And not only did they smell different, um, looked different at the end, you can just tell it's way, way, way different. I would like to build a really big one for my vegetable patch so that I can kind of oxygenate the water when I'm using it. Because yeah, it's pretty amazing. You kind of get that thing running and then um, put a glass under it and look at it, and there's just all tiny little bubbles all swirling around in that for ages. It stays actually, yeah, a little bit messy, I'd say, is the only problem with them. Yeah, having a pretty good Sunday, dude. I hope you are too. Went for a bit of a road trip yesterday and did some trading. They're going TWP 23. Thank Dan. How long can you keep your green Supreme Court? Keep it dry, and you can keep it for until it runs out. Man, it doesn't really expire that way. So the micro, we recommend about 2 years on the dark matter and the antimatter and the Rhizo Mojo. The tins are arguably probably a lot longer than that because they're hermetically sealed. So they last really until you open them. But yeah, 2 years is about a good guide on that. Green Supreme, it's about sort of keeping it dry enough so you can continue to use it as a powder because it is a soluble powder. So, over time, if you've got a cylinder and it keeps getting more and more air in there, that air might have humidity in it and that'll cause or can cause the powder to cake. Some of the early batches of Green Supreme were pretty bad for that. But we fixed that. We actually paid a formulator to kind of help us um, fix what was wrong with that. And it's a lot better now. So I don't really have too many problems with it going um, hard anymore, but I think storing it somewhere where it's dry. So the cardboard cylinders are pretty good. We recently swapped those from the Pop Top style one that we use for the antimatter and dark matter, and now the Rhizo Mojo 2. We've started doing that in those. To the one that we use for the Ocean Potion, which is kind of a push-in metal lid, and they seem to seal a bit better. So that's better again. We were putting the Green Supreme in like a little compostable bag that was inside the cylinder there for a while as kind of a compromise because we had those those cylinders in good supply and we kind of had to do something. Um, but yeah, we've swapped to using those new ones that we got in for the Ocean Potion, and they've been quite a bit better. So that and the formulation change have meant that there's too many problems with that. If you are getting to a point where it's three-quarters of the way down and it's starting to clump, what you can do is just throw the rest of it in a sandwich bag. I know the cylinder looks cool, um, but yeah, you can just always throw the rest of it in there, and then you've got the option to squeeze out the rest of the air. So it should keep it drier. There is a desiccant pack in there, but there's limitations on how long that can continue absorbing, depending on, if you're keeping it for years. Tommy Hilfiger and Jackson. Yeah, and I mostly full scoop Green Supreme, so that you get through it. But yeah, some people have picked up the 250 gram Rhizo Mojos, so that's been interesting because it's a tiny little scoop, so you might be pouring it out. Roger Troutman. Hell yeah. Yeah, that's kind of why we made the choice to go with pouches um, for the aquamarine. Was it's a fairly hygroscopic sort of a formula, so it does in a pouch you can get rid of the extra air out of the bag, and you can also squeeze the bag to break up powder, which is harder to do in a cylinder. So it's a shame because it would look sick on a cylinder. The label would look mad wrapped around, but it still came out kind of nice. I like it. It's one of my favorites. I think the thing I like about it the most in terms of aesthetics is that the veg and bloom formulas are made to sit on the shelf and look at each other, or have the ocean potion sat in between so that they kind of look at the ocean potion. But yeah, they're facing different ways. Some people have read the warning sections and kind of thought I was having a bit too much fun there, but that's okay. Most people don't read those sections anyway. Just means you're extra attentive if you do. Heavy on the hand claps. A few people have tried redosing their soil, which isn't bad. Rejuvenating, invigorating, refunkifying their soil based on the video. And so, yeah, probably in another week, because they messaged me this week, um, I'll be putting up some pics, hopefully, of people's microbe explosions and all the rest of it they've got going on. The stuff I did is in the wheelbarrow still around the side, and it's been pretty cold, so it's breaking down. All the rest of it smells really good, but not a lot of visible mycelium or anything like that. There was one from Aussie Autos today, actually, who is doing the pre-activated top dressing stuff with either castings or compost. I can't remember which. He's got both. Um, but putting it in a tub of soil, so it's in its own little tub inside another tub. Um, so it's sort of nested in there. I thought that was an innovative kind of way of doing it and keeping it well insulated in the grow room. Coco Garden there's got a pre-activated top dress that's looking super funky. Yeah, I think it's practical, Tommy. It depends. So some people would prefer to, turn it and burn it, so to speak, They use it once and then they kind of discard it outside, either into large grow beds or large pots, and maybe they'll do some outdoor stuff in it or they'll do some vegetables. That's some people's approach. A more sustainable approach, I think, and I honestly think the soil gets better over time if you continue to re-amend it. Um, but it depends on, the amount of elbow grease you kind of want to put in. So if you're fine with a bit of digging, it's really not that hard and it doesn't take that long to re-amend your soil. It's more cost effective, there's less shipping and all that involved, and things like peat moss and all this sort of stuff are they ecologically have a cost. So trying to reutilize those things as much as possible, um, that's preferable. I mean, it doesn't make as much sense to kind of use those ingredients to just discard them. So they take a long time to form in the environment, and so the intention of using those is that they're the best materials to use for making a soil. But kind of the intention is that once people have got it, they might add to it over time. But just throwing it away um, doesn't really make good sense to me. But yeah, it really depends on the digging. So I did a 20 litre amount in that video. That was easy to do, and it took probably 5 or 6 minutes. If you've got 10 40-litre pots to do, it's 400 litres. You would be surprised how little amount of time that really takes to get that re-amended properly. There is an issue of space, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think it's very practical for most people. It might be harder the first time you do it, and I should probably do a demonstration on doing larger amounts because that's really going to apply to more people. Most people are going to be doing, 100, 120 liters kind of thing generally on average. So there's some different, like when we first started selling the grow dirt into shops, um, the first couple of hundred batches were made shovels and tarps. We didn't have a mixer machine for second year of business, so that's certainly an option. There's been demonstrations of that on the internet. I can show you kind of the way that we got really good at in kind of we got that down to a fine art. And so yeah, that technique was well honed. Small batch hand mixed production. So yeah, if that would be useful, I could explain how I did that. I don't really like the cement mixers and things. I don't think that they do a terrific job at mixing soil. Certainly not anything larger than small amounts. Um, and so yeah, that may be something that we could go over. So a couple of different ways you can, yeah. So that would again be why that video would be useful. So a lot of people just use plastic bins. I like to try and pick food grade tubs if possible, um, and they're available in a lot of areas. So you can sort of find those that are made for storing produce, or you can, if you've got a large amount, you can just store it. Get the biggest tarp you can and store it under a folded tarp. Um, all of these may or may not be practical for you, but yeah, or crates, stackable, like Rubbermaid style crates work pretty good as well, and you can get them in, like 40, 50 litre sizes, so you can have a shelf set up, stack them up on that. One person I know has that kind of setup, and they've even got heat mats with temperature controls set up to keep the soil at, like, the environmental temperature it's gonna be going into the grow room, because some people are just, mad attention to detail. But I mean, hey, like whenever he sends me photos, they're always tip top. So obviously worth going to that effort. But those are some ways that you can kind of do it. Um, I might have mentioned before, but my way of doing it was I used to have two batches of soil. So if you've got two batches of soil on the run, then you can have one breaking down the whole time that the other one is in the room, and then you can just do the old switcheroo. So as the old comes out, the new goes in. Um, Again, may not be practical for you. These are just options. Nice one, Gary and Greened Out team. Nice to see both of you two. Yes, see, and that's a good tip there. 8x5 drip tray. It's another way to do it. Bro, Green Daddy, I've got to wave to you. How you going, brother? Amend and read. Yeah, yeah. But that's my thoughts on it anyway. I mean, all the amendments and things like that, they're mostly, we do use a little bit of guano and stuff like that, but we don't use a huge amount of it. Most of that stuff's going to grow back. So the plant-based meals, the creature-based meals, all quite replaceable in a much shorter period of time than things like lenodite and pumice and particularly peat moss. So that's where I would encourage people to reuse. And Warrigange there, yeah, with two batches. Most people that are able to do perpetual gardens are utilising multiple batches of soil. Jared, 150 litre sizes. That's yeah, that's quite a large tote, isn't it? Are they sturdy? Like, are they able to be moved? Because that's the other thing. You can get some large totes, but they're not. I like the Rubbermaid ones. Um, they're just. I've had some of those for 15 years. They just last and last. I'm not sure if they sell them at the Big Green Shed or not, but they are available places. Normally cleaning places, places that sell, yeah, stuff for cleaning. Normally the best way to go to try and find those. You'll probably find, Dank Den, that you'll go more a no-till route when going a bed that size. Um, that's what I would more urge you to do in that. So I think we were talking the volume you were using was gonna be something around 400 liters. You can certainly no-till that amount. So you could probably get by with just top dressing and minimally working stuff in rather than kind of, having to dig that all through. No, it's got wheels. Okay. You know, if it's got casters on it, that's great. And yeah, no worries, Tommy. We'll be glad to sort that out. But yeah, generally, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, just go that way, and that'll work fine. You can always just layer things in. Generally, that'll work well over time. Just don't go super crazy with your worm castings if you and, probably add some worms too. Get that all happening in there. So it's very, very important to the no-till way of doing it. But yeah, some people have, run their soil and then thrown it out into the vegetable patch and grown several crops of vegetables and been surprised how much legs was still left in it. It obviously depends on how much like if you grow a really big full-term plant in a 20-liter pot, it might not have as much juice left. But yeah, people are often pretty surprised by how much continues to give back. Just the particular plant we're trying to work with here is like really, really demanding. And so, it, requires more than most, I would argue, or at least a certain set of scenarios. Yeah, 150 litre on casters is a pretty solid option. I do like mixing, with a tart because you can sort of get it a bit flatter. Um, the caveat with that is that you need to make sure that you distribute the nutrient kit and your minerals evenly over the surface of that. But, it's not that hard. And just mix it well. Like, if you think you've mixed it well, mix it for another 5 or 10, and then you'll be sure. And bend your knees, not your back. That's the main tip. Why must you dig like that? Why must you use your back? Nothing but the dirt in me. Yeah, alrighty. Does anyone else have any other questions? It's actually been a pretty good discussion. Yeah, that's so fun. Oh, we added a re-amendment bundle to the website as well. So if you were wanting to sort of, try out the high power and do some re-amending, I think it works out that you basically get the bag for free. So, yeah, not a bad little bundle there, Rody. Yeah, that's one of my favorite channels to follow actually. They're just, yeah, pulling ridiculous looking stuff out of rocks. But, I mean, really, they've got the mineral content there. Obviously, the organic matter level is very low. And I'm not sure, I mean, maybe they're using, some liquid stuff that they're watering in. I mean, they would obviously have to be irrigating. You can't just grow things in completely bone dry soil. So I feel as though there's a bit more to it. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, there's all the mineral content there. It would be great to, get it and analyze it and kind of see what the composition is. But yeah, I love that stuff. Like all the really good hash ones. They look amazing. And also too, you've got to think. See, this is where I think with picking breeders, for instance, the ones that breed their stuff in soil tend to produce plants that grow better in soil, and ones that have been bred on multi-bottle programs tend to work better on those programs. And there is crossover, but I find that the ones that have been bred in soil tend to be, I don't know, I mean, I like them better, but they tend to take to that kind of style a lot better. Whereas, yeah, sometimes ones that have come from other programs have some weird stuff where they really crave certain elements that might have been at an elevated level in the programs, but wouldn't be found that way in a soil. Yeah, well, I mean, limestone's all your calcium and a lot of a lot of magnesium in a lot of limestone as well. I mean, there's obviously dolomitic limestone, which has 3 parts to every one, but then, generally just it's considered an impurity, but in agricultural lime, there's generally always a little bit of magnesium in there. So, yeah, that's where the full spec soil weighs a lot because of the mineral content. And, yeah, we kind of found that, I mean, all the exciting stuff, so the dry amendments, like the different fertilizers and things, um, tend to kind of steal the thunder sometimes of the minerals, but they don't work when they're not used in tandem with one another. So one influences the other. And we found that without, really solid mineral foundation there, and I'm not talking like kind of the co-opted mineral kind of, like natural stuff, like the oyster lime and all those kind of things. That was entirely necessary to get that right, to make sure that anything else worked well. Um, Non-fungible toy is red volcanic soil. It can be. So a lot of the stuff up on the north coast, you could use it around, 10 to 15% of the soil, and it would be okay. Some of it's kind of a clay though, so it'll have minerals and it'll, normally that stuff's good for cation exchange. But you'd want to maybe have that checked out to see what the composition of it is before you go basing too much of your soil on it. It's hard to give kind of a cut and dry answer on that. We don't use topsoils in our products. It's a cost-effective way of building soils, but at the same time, it introduces a whole bunch of different variables that are way too hard to pin down. So we kind of engineer ours from the base up. Um, so yeah, but some people making larger amounts use a native topsoil. It's an easy way sometimes to get biology in there, and it gives you a good starting place in terms of a lot of the different minerals if the soil you're using is good. Um, but yeah, generally though, to really make sure you should probably have that tested. And yeah, Warrigange there. One that I've really liked lately that I'll probably give a shout out to is Midwest Elevations. Um, Really big fan of their stuff, seeing really phenomenal results from their stuff. And this is not, just one pack, multiple different people running multiple different lines from them um, over a few cycles. And yeah, seeing some really cool stuff out of that. Fresh grower. Yeah, so that would be the thing. You would want to get, yeah, you would want to kind of about 390. I think you can get a pretty comprehensive one. About 110, you can kind of get an alrightish sort of a one test, kind of tell you what's going on there. You can get some stuff that you can kind of mail order and do yourself at the house. Um, it's accurate-ish. So there's a few different ways you can kind of go about that. Um, but yeah, for us with what we're doing, we don't use that because it would be too difficult to kind of secure a decent amount of a really good, top dressing. So a really good topsoil to use, and I wouldn't consider it a premium enough ingredient to be in the grow dirt soils. Um, which yeah, people sometimes say, oh, you could build a soil with heaps cheaper stuff, and you can. That's not what we're trying to do there. It's, if I want it to be an ultra premium thing, it's gotta be made of ultra premium stuff. And so, um, yeah, that's where the margin on our soil is, quite a bit lower, but at the same time, it hangs in there because it's a banger. No corners cut, so to speak. Doesn't look like a McDonald's driveway, put it that way. Half rocks. Yeah, it's the same thing. So indoor, strains versus outdoor strains, they're really bred for different environments. DJ Short, argued that there should have been a third, denomination, so sativa, indica, and then, indoor. Um, yeah, but yeah, they're, there's just a different environment, so things are bred and adapted to the environment that they're intended to be put in. And so it's not to say that you can't. There's always contrarians with everything, and I love those people because I'm one of them. But yeah, generally speaking, it's lots of it. You can fit a square peg in a round hole. You just might have to hammer it a bit, whereas it'll go right into the square, sort of right off the edges. Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be differences. All of these things prefer different environments. So I tended to find that the more older school stuff, not surprisingly, um, runs a bit better on a bit less. Light soil tends to work pretty well with them. Um, so yeah, different plants. It's not all one thing. There's like just like us. There's many different variations within that pool. The soil farmer. Come on, dude. Actually, he is a good account to follow for making cost-effective batches on a larger scale. Uses, um, yeah, like it was wood and stuff like that for a lot of the base material, and produces some really nice plants. We were talking about someone asked about incorporating topsoil, native topsoil, and building a soil from scratch. The soil farmer, if you were wondering. Tommy Ilfiger. I more suggest just trying to keep the area in and around the clone. So your soil will be at a level of moisture when you put the plant into it, your little clone. Um, and I wouldn't necessarily let the rest of the pot go dry, but the plant's not tapped into that yet. And so you're really only losing moisture to evaporation. Um, so when you're doing your watering, just focus the watering around the plant, and apply a little bit out further out towards the edges of the pot so that the whole thing doesn't get dry. But just keep in mind that um, the plant's not taking as much out yet, and so I don't generally start watering um, to full saturation until I see roots kind of at the bottom of the pot. So I tend to water quite lightly at first, and then kind of increase that based on the size of the plants. So yeah, I kind of would suggest that, but with the caveat of saying like don't let the whole pot go dry except for that section. It shouldn't. It should all wick through, but I feel the need to mention that. Mendo breath cross dosido sounds interesting. A lot of that Mendo stuff smells similar. The whole town of Mendo, Sino smelt that way when I kind of went through there. The particular odor. Um, yeah, hard to describe, but easy to remember. Yeah, that's a good tip there from Dank then. I'll miss things in a little bit, but at the same time, being careful not to just totally soak things. Easy to put it in, harder to take it out. If you do go too far, though, you can use a thick wad of the Viva paper towels work pretty good, or you can use a beach towel. Beach towels work really well as well. Um, Fold that up, put your pot on top of that, your seedling tray, and it'll whip a lot of that moisture out. Kinda pull it out of there, don't go too far. Yeah, it's another one there. Yeah, he's a good one. I think he's down in Arizona. It's a funny place for organics to thrive, Arizona. Very, very hot and sort of desolate, but, wherever the green goes, so does organics. Wizard of Oz. Rightio. I think we've got time for one more. Has someone got one more? Give me the one, and then I'll find one to write out on. Frosty Green Trees. You made it just in time, dude. Where you going? What have we got? Come on. I think the next track's actually to write out on. It'll work. It'll work just nicely. Yeah, it's hard to walk, breathe, and type at the same time. Multitasking is a challenge. That's mainly the trick, I think, too, on the subject of watering clones, with getting them to establish is not keeping them locked up too long, but also not overwatering them. Doesn't matter what you're doing them in, whether you're doing them in blocks or whether you're doing them in cubes or superstarter or what have you. It's super easy to overwater them. So, and most people, when they're starting out trying to do them, that's the number one thing that people get wrong. So the first 24 to 48 hours are really the most critical time with those kind of things. The trouble is most people get locked into that mentality of the first 24 hours for the next 3 weeks, keep the vents closed and keep overwatering things. So yeah, transition out of that as quickly as you can. And what you'll find is that you'll get a small amount of wilting and things like that on your clones, maybe as you sort of allow them to open up. But that transpiration kind of seems to be what drives the whole cloning process. With your seedlings, they'll stretch out and you'll get kind of lanky looking, um, damping off sometimes at the worst extremes of it. But the cloning, you just kind of get this stalled situation that goes on. Um, so yeah, that's where we encourage people on the Superstarter bag to use a misting model. It's harder to overwater with that because it's harder to get the water out of the bottle. How long do I use Stone Age for in terms of, um, do you mean do I cut it out when re-amending, or do you mean within a given crop cycle? I do reduce it over time actually when doing re-amending. I find that, over time it's just not needed. But again, basing that on kind of how the plants look, so the plants kind of generally tend to dictate what I add, and it's it. But it's it. This is it. Oh, within a crop cycle. So usually so with the tea kind of program that I'm putting together at the moment, I've only added it to 1 brew out of the 4 that I've done. So not using it a tremendous amount, and that's just based on how the plants, are looking. Um, I really only use it with the top dressings. Um, so yeah, I use it maybe, 2 to 3 times, in most crop cycles. Some people don't. They'll just use the Herb Superb by itself, and they still get good results. So I wouldn't say that it's always 100% necessary, especially in the full spec soil because, again, good reserves there. So that mineral backing sometimes isn't as needed. Um, so you can kinda if you're worried about it, especially in a situation like yours, you can kind of what you're looking for. You can kind of, pull that out if you want to and kinda see how that kinda works for you. I reckon a little bit of it with the top dressing, so, like a 3 to 1, I think works pretty well, and it's hard to go overboard. But depending on the additions that you're using, so if you're using Ocean Potion and Aquamarine, in tandem, you may find that the Stone Age is not as required. Um, so yeah, be kind of some tips on that one. Yeah. So if you overuse it, sometimes you'll get a little bit of maybe tip burn on it. Um, may have maybe gone a little bit too far in that way. It can burn a little bit, yeah, yeah. Um, and that would yeah, there's a number of reasons for that, but, if you went way overboard, it definitely can cause some burning. The Herb Superb's very, very difficult to go overboard with, but yeah, your minerals, you can go a little bit too far with those sometimes. Generally, the burn's not sort of super drastic or anything like that, but yeah, I have definitely done that before myself, and it seems to be easier to do, as a matter of fact, in a tea. I think 'cause you're, solubilizing certain amounts of things, into that water that maybe are available a lot slower when you're watering. If you go way too far with it, you'll notice that things actually do the opposite of what they're supposed to in terms of, you get a tiny bit of yellowing and a little bit of tip burn versus, a really intense green. So, if you think you've done that, don't use any more of it this cycle, and, increase your irrigation by a little bit if they're not past the halfway point of flower. And we're not trying to flush the soil, we're just kinda, trying to I just hesitate to say flushing, but at the same time, you're kinda diluting that stuff down a little bit. Try that and help. Alrighty. I'm gonna write out on the atomic dog. What I'm gonna do. I hope you guys have a terrific rest of your Sunday, and, yeah, get at me about, yeah, do you wanna see Guerrilla Guides? Do you wanna see a Superstarter guide? And any other questions that you might have, inboxes. Get all up in our DMs. Yeah, that actually thank you, Bodhi. That's actually a great, a better way of putting it. Leaching, not flushing. Thank you. I'm gonna use that if you don't mind. Yeah. Alright, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a terrific rest of your day. We'll see you next time.